Welcome back. Now we're going to go ahead and smooth out our functionality for the array. And there's a few things that we need to take care of to polish this up. So let's go back to shooter_character.cpp. Now here we have select button pressed, and this is when we hit the E key to pick up an item. Now, if we're tracing for an item, we're going to start the item curve, which means that item is going to start interping. Now, we need to set the trace hit item to null at this point because we don't want to be able to spam the E key. We don't want to start the item curve again when it's already interping. So to prevent that from happening, we're going to do a couple things. First, when we start the item curve, we're going to go ahead and right after that, we're going to get the trace hit item, and we're going to set this equal to null pointer. So that way it's not going to allow us to hit the select button again and start the item curve again when we just started the item curve. Now, the next frame, we're going to be performing the trace again, so it's possible we might set trace hit item to the same item again if we trace and hit it again next frame. And we can prevent that by going into our trace for items function. And here in trace for items, if we've traced the item and we've hit it, then the first thing we do is we cast to a item and we store that in trace hit item. Now, if this cast is successful, what we can do is check to see if it's interping, because if this item is already interping, we don't really care about it as far as tracing goes. We can set it to null. So what we're going to do is say if trace hit item and trace hit item get item state is equal to e item state equip interping. If that is the case, if we're tracing and hitting an item and it is successfully cast to an A item and its item state is equip interping, then we're simply going to set trace hit item to null pointer. So we're setting it to null pointer here, we're setting it to null pointer in select button pressed, and that way we won't be able to spam it. Okay, great. Now another polish item is, let's go into item.cpp and let's check out the set item properties function. And when we're setting our item in the falling state, here we are falling, we need to set the visibility to true. Now, we didn't care about this before because the visibility was already true if it was an equipped item. But now if we're swapping with an item in our inventory that has visibility set to false, we need to set that back to true. So right here in the falling case, we're going to say item mesh set visibility, and we're going to use true. Now another thing we need to change is in the item.cpp, we're going to go to finish interping. Now here in finish interping, you'll see that we set the item state to picked up. And before this was fine because we were getting pickup item and we were setting it to picked up, but now it's possible that when we finish interping, this item that was interping just might be equipped. You see, if our inventory is full, then whatever item we currently have equipped is going to be swapped with this item. So we don't need to set it to picked up. So what do we set it to? Well, we actually don't need to set it here in finish interping. And the reason is we call characters get pickup item. And if we go to get pickup item, then we'll see here in get pickup item, we first check to see if the inventory is not full. And if it's not full, then we set the weapon's pickup state to picked up. Now, if the inventory is full, we call swap weapon. And if we go to swap weapon, we'll see that swap weapon will take the currently equipped weapon and drop it, and then equip the new weapon. And if we peek drop weapon, we'll see that drop weapon takes care of calling set item state. It sets the item state to falling. And if we look at equip weapon and peek that, well, we'll see that equip weapon takes care of setting the item state. It sets it to equipped. So we actually don't need to set the item state in finish interping, so we removed that. So another change we need to make is in swap weapon, as soon as we set the inventory at the equipped weapon slot equal to the new weapon, so we're replacing the equipped weapon with the new weapon, we need to actually set the slot index for the new weapon. So we're going to say weapon to swap set slot index, and we're going to set it equal to the slot index of the equipped weapon that we're replacing. So we're going to use equipped weapon get slot index, and we're going to set that slot to that value. So let's go ahead and compile this, and let's try swapping out some weapons and make sure that everything swaps correctly. Okay, so we've compiled. Now let's go back into the editor and press play and pick up some items. So first I'm going to fill up the inventory, and we're going to pick up this last weapon, and since we have the default weapon equipped just above that F key symbol, then we should swap out for this new base weapon. So let's swap it, and there we have it. Now if we swap back, then we get that purple background back again. So we're swapping just fine. Now if I press 1 to switch to the weapon in the first inventory slot, then I'm going to go ahead and swap, and we're swapping this successfully. Okay, so remember, the item that we're equipped now has that purple background. We're going to swap, so we throw it down. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next weapon that's over the 2 key. So now we have this one with the orange background. And if we swap with the weapon on the ground, we should now see a purple background. So I'm going to hit E, and there's our purple background. Now I'm going to swap back, and there's our gold background. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the third weapon and swap. And it looks like they're swapping successfully. I'm going to switch to the fourth weapon and swap. And those are swapping successfully. And let's try the fifth weapon and swap that. Okay. Now, just to make sure that we are keeping the state and that our equipped weapon variable is affecting what's represented in the inventory bar, I'm going to fire off some rounds. It might be a little hard for you to see, so I'm going to go ahead and go to full screen here. So this way we can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and fill up the inventory again. And so we're equipped with the default weapon. That's above the F icon. Let's fire a couple rounds. Now it's at 27 rounds. And let's swap out. And now we have this weapon. Let's fire a couple rounds. It's at 15. Now we'll swap back. And there's our default weapon with 27 rounds. Let's swap to number 2. And let's see if we can reload. And yes, we're reloading successfully. Let's swap to number 4. And that one was given 999 rounds, which is kind of ridiculous, but it's updating just fine. Now we can swap out, and we have 15 rounds in this one. Now it's down to 5. There's our ridiculously loaded gun. And there's our gun with 5 rounds. So it seems to be working okay. We can go ahead and hit the F key to go back to the default weapon and swap among these by hitting various keys. And it looks like we can subtract ammo from each of those by swapping to them. So everything seems to be working okay. Now, just one more stress test. I'm going to go ahead and press play and pick up a weapon. And I'm going to swap to that weapon right away. So now our equipped weapon is in the 1 spot. And now let's go ahead and keep picking up items and just check to see if we can swap among these items. Ooh, okay, so we got a crash. And it says assertion failed, index greater than or equal to 0, and index less than array number. And it's telling me that array index out of bounds, 3 from an array of size 3. If an array has a size 3, that means it only has valid indices 0 through 2. And it says that we're trying to index an array out of bounds. So it's possible that I tried to switch to a weapon in a slot that didn't have a weapon in it. Let's go ahead and launch the Unreal Engine launcher and try to repro this crash. This is interesting. Okay, so I've relaunched the engine, and I think what I did was I tried to access an array element out of bounds by pressing one of the numbers for an array slot that didn't have a weapon in it. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to hit the 1 key, and sure enough, we got the crash. Here's our crash report, and it says array index out of bounds 1 from an array of size 1. This is a great learning experience. This means that we need to prevent ourselves from trying to access an array element out of bounds, and that's from pressing those keys F and 1 through 5. So let's go ahead and program that safeguard into our code. So let's take a look at F key pressed. Now we check to see if our equipped weapon has a slot index of 0, in which case we return. But if it doesn't, then we call exchange inventory items with our equipped weapon slot index passing in 0. Now 1 key and 2 key and all the others do the same thing, passing in the index that we're trying to access. So let's go to exchange inventory items. And we see that if current item index is the new item index and new item index is greater than or equal to inventory.num, we return. Now here's our problem. What we want is that if we're trying to swap with an item we're already equipped with, we just return. And we also want to return if the new index is greater than or equal to the inventory.num, but we put an and here, which means that we'll continue here if just one of these is false. So really we need to return with an or case. So this was actually human error here. So with the or here, we should prevent ourselves from trying to access an array element out of bounds. So this should be a good enough fix. So let's go ahead and go back and try to access the array element for a slot item that does not have a weapon in it. Okay, so we're back here in the editor. We're going to go ahead and hit play, and I'm going to hit the 1 key, and nothing happens. I'll hit the 2, 3, 4, 5 key, nothing happens. So we can now continue with our stress test and know that we won't access an array element out of bounds. So let's equip this. I'm going to switch to that weapon. I'm going to pick up another one, switch to that weapon. I actually hit the 3 key, and I didn't cause a crash, which is great. So I'm going to switch between all of these weapons and fire rounds as I do so. And I'll go ahead and continue picking stuff up, swapping weapons, equipping weapons, and what have you. Everything seems to be working just fine. Another funny thing I noticed is this weapon has the weapon icon for its ammo icon. So another funny thing to notice. But anyways, everything seems to be working fine now. And there's another thing that we're going to need to fix, and we'll do that in the next video. And that is when we are reloading, we need to prevent ourselves from being able to swap weapons or change to different weapons in our inventory. So we'll do that in the next video. See you soon.